House Bill 4079 relating to housing and declaring an emergency.
Question now arises upon third reading and final passage of House Bill 4079C. Representative Stark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, when you start in this building as a freshman, sometimes you come with an idea that you think is really simple. And the next thing you know, you're involved in all kinds of grand conversations. That's this bill for me. So really, the origin of this bill for me was I was sitting in all these committees as we talked about the need for affordable housing and the affordable housing crisis here in Oregon. And time again, we heard several people from different sides give all sorts of input as to what are the root causes of affordable housing problems. And the answer is it's complex. And it's not something that's just happened recently. It's been complex for quite a while, and it's an issue that we're facing right now. So I wanted to make sure as we deal with some of the bills that are going through this building right now, that we're also things that deal with immediate need of affordable housing, that we were looking ahead so that in 5, 10, 20 years, we don't end up in the same situation. So to the bill, the basics of what the bill does. 2 pilot programs to have an emergency expansion of the UGB for up to 50 acres. These pilot projects, one would be for a city less than 25,000, one for a city over 25,000. And that was actually chosen based off of the number there, based off of the current LCDC kind of expedited process that they have. That housing would be set aside for affordable housing mix. That means there's going to be things that are considered affordable, and then there's going to be generic housing there as well. We intentionally left it vague on some of the issues, but I want to talk about the rules. The rules for this bill, the rules for this pilot program will be written by LCDC. So they have the ability to put in some really strong side rails for this bill as we move forward and for these pilots. And one of the things that we talked about and we clarified in the bill is that we expect LCDC to specify affordable housing efforts that the city has already undertaken. And when we talked in committee about this, there's a great table right now that is used for affordable housing called Table 5. And we couldn't actually put Table 5 into the bill because next year Table 5 might be Table 6 or Table 7 or Table 2. But the whole idea is that there are affordable housing efforts that need to be made right now, and there's a guideline for that already that people should be making before even applying for this project. So LCDC gets to make sure that those are written into the rules. So what this looks like is basically you would have a city, a developer, and a landowner who get together and they say, look, we don't have appropriate affordable housing, affordable land within our UGB. So they get together and they make a proposal, and they take that proposal to LCDC, who's already written the rules by that point. And then LCDC would say, yes, you do or don't qualify, and give the final stamp of approval. That's how this would work. A lot of people would be having to work together to make it happen. So I wanted to take a minute, though, and play a little game of Mythbusters. There have been a lot of comments about what this bill supposedly does, and I'm going to share with you some of those comments and then cite the specific bill and clarify for you on some of the things. One of the things that has been said is that this bill will first pave over precious farmland. That's not accurate. Okay, the bill specifically prohibits in Section 8(2) cities from bringing high-value farmland into their UGB. It also directs LCDC to select projects that avoid impacting farm and forest uses. Another thing, there are a lot of places for residential development adjacent to the UGB that are not farm and forest lands. There might be a gravel pit. There's all sorts of stuff out there that is not farm and forest lands. And remember, nobody is forced to do this project. It's completely voluntary, and you have to have the property owner, the developer, and the city all involved. Another claim that's been made about this bill is that it will let cities duck responsibility for affordable housing. That's not accurate. Under the bill, LCDC would be required to select pilot project sites in cities that have demonstrated they already made efforts to accommodate and develop affordable housing inside their UGB. And by the way, if you want to look specifically, I was talking about that just a moment ago. That's in Section 4 and also in Section 5. Current land use laws require cities to have an adequate supply of land inside their UGB. But even those who still have some vacant land, it's often extremely expensive, especially short on supply and affordability in some of our smaller rural communities. So 4079 is very limited and it's very modest. LCDC will hold cities accountable, and the legislature will hold LCDC accountable as the agency is to report back over the next several legislative sessions. Another myth that's been said about this bill: it will shove low-income families out to the edge of town away from services and jobs. Well, again, the bill clarifies this. In Section 4D, the bill requires LCDC to select pilot projects that are near public facilities and services and infrastructure that will be provided at a reasonable cost. 4079 calls for the pilot project sites to be near identified transit corridors. And think about this: is a developer really going to make an investment in something if the infrastructure costs too much? They wouldn't do it. I've taken a little bit of offense. I've heard a few times that this is going to create a bunch of ghettos way out in the middle of nowhere. First of all, we're talking about 2 pilot programs. That's not a bunch. And the second thing is, remember, this is an affordable housing mix. It's not just affordable housing, and it can look different dependent on the project. So in no way are we going to allow something to build a ghetto out there, and to do so kind of, or even to say that, bothers me. So when all is said and done, this is not going to solve all of our land use issues, and it's not going to solve all of our affordable housing issues. What it does do is ask our cities and our communities to take a strong look at what they're doing now for affordable housing, what they're doing now with their UGB, and if that's not working, to put forward a good proposal to apply for one of these pilot programs. Thank you.
Representative Stark, would you like to close?
Yes. Well, thank you for the discussion on this bill. One last myth I want to dispel about this bill was several times I've seen an email that said this was nothing more than a ruse to burst open the UGB. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Okay, this bill, if you think about the risk versus the reward involved with this bill, the risk of this bill, number one risk for me is that nobody tries it. And so this is a challenge for all those counties out there, all those cities who have said that the UGB process is not working. It's time for you to step up and take advantage of this pilot program and prove that this works. Otherwise, your argument's getting shut down. For the other risk with this bill is, let's just pretend for a moment that somehow we got LCDC, the counties, and everybody involved, everyone, to completely ignore all the safeguards that we put into this. And we actually went out and bulldozed over some farmland. Let's just pretend that everybody lost their sanity for a moment and we attempted, and that's what happened. That would affect, this bill proposes to affect, out of the 1.2 million acres of farmland here, it affects 0.0006% of that. And that's if they ignored every single possible safeguard and rule. It's a pretty small risk. But the reward, on the other hand, number one, the affordable housing reward, is hopefully communities, as we put this bill forward and they consider whether or not they should do this pilot project, hopefully they take a good, strong look at what they're doing and they are inspired to utilize the tools that they have to increase affordable housing within their UGB. That would be reward number one. Reward number two is that we actually have an opportunity to take the streamlined process that has currently been worked on, and we figure out a way to make it an expedited process, and that counties and cities come forward with innovative ideas on how to preserve the delicate balance between affordable housing and our beautiful land. Thank you, Madam Speaker.